Hey everyone, welcome to day 1 of 13 days of Halloween. I'm super excited to get started here. Today we're doing a fun cartoony version of the sorting hat from Harry Potter. I wanted to start off with something a little bit easier but also really fun. So this one is going to test your drawing skills. If you're not comfortable with drawing it out as I'm teaching, that's perfectly fine. Feel free to use the traceable that I sent, which should be just like this. I will go, as I'm going, I will tell you a little bit of the differences if you're using the traceable versus drawing freehand. If you're drawing freehand, we're going to start with the white canvas as it is, which is a little different if you've taken some of my classes before. I usually have you do a background first. This time, we're going to draw first. So if you have a Sharpie or a pencil, that would be what you would use to draw freehand. If you're using the traceable, you will need chalk, any chalk, plain chalkboard chalk, sidewalk chalk, anything like that. So if you are doing the traceable, you'll want to paint your background first. And that'll be what I was going to do for the background, was a mix of white with just a little bit of burnt umber to give kind of like a tan color. And you'll let that completely dry. Then you'll flip your traceable over, cover the entire back with chalk. And then you'll flip it back over on top of your canvas. You can tape it down if you want. And you can take the end of a paintbrush or even a pencil, or I have this little embosser tool, and you'll just go over only the lines here. And then the only thing that will transfer onto your canvas is the outlines. I can do a separate video showcasing that, which I'll post a little bit later today. But so for right now, for those of you that are going to freehand, we're going to get started here as soon as I find my marker that must have flown away. Here we go. All right. So you see, this is just a very basic outline here of the sorting hat, and he looks kind of grumpy, right? Okay, so we're going to start right about, I guess, the center of your canvas, and we're going to start with the eyes. So you're going to come here and you're going to do a wide V. And then this side is going to curve. Okay? You feel free to pause at any point if you need to. Then you're going to do a U shape. Okay? And then this is a bit wider U that curves. Okay? So now we're going to start up here with the point of the hat. So from the top left of this V, you're just going to do a curve. Off of that curve, you're going to do another one, this one a little bit bigger. Okay. And then you're going to do a tiny little curve there. And now we're going to do a sideways V, but if you see, the V is curved. It doesn't come to a point, okay? So we're going to come over here. Come out and curve like that. Okay. Now we're going to go up a little bit and then come down just above where the eye is. Make another curve, sort of like an upside down L. And then we're going to come down like that. Okay. And now on this side, we're going to come down from where the eye is and then do a V off of that and come down, and you're going to want to be approximately where this other line is here. Okay, you can adjust as you need to. So I'm drawing mine a little bit big, so the brim is going to be a bit smaller, but if you have a bigger canvas or wider canvas, you can definitely make your brim wider. The steps are exactly the same no matter what. We're just going to do little curves like this. And then I'm coming down to make the brim of the hat. Now where we did our curves here, we're going to do a curved line to connect them. Okay? And now where the brim of our hat is, this is a fun little move here, okay? So we're going to do a curve like that, okay? Now I wanted to make him look a little old and tattered, so now I'm doing a bit of a wavy line before I connect the two. And now to make the kind of 3D aspect, I'm gonna come from here and just connect like that. So now for his mouth, like I said, he looks a wee bit grumpy. So we're gonna do a frowny face, okay? So you just do an upside down curve and then make an angry face. And then just to give it a bit more dimension, I might extend this a bit. Add little mouth lines at the end, or smile, frown lines, I should say. And now just to make him look a little bit more old and tattered, we're just gonna draw a few accents. So I'm adding another curved line here. You don't have to make this look exactly like mine. These are just my suggestions. So a little chin bump there, I guess. Maybe a wrinkle here. Can do another wrinkle under the eye here. Maybe a fabric wrinkle there. And here. And to make that, do as many or as few wrinkles as you want. Again, those of you that are using the traceable, stay tuned for another video showing you how to use the traceable. Okay, so we will be shading and highlighting to make him look a bit 3D, but before we can get started with all of that, we need to just fill in. So this here is a I guess a medium round. This one I've got paint over the number. I believe this is a 6, size 6, but honestly, depending on the brand, the sizes vary. So just look for something that's not too large, because you want to be able to get in all the details. So I'm using the burnt sienna right now. This is kind of a medium brown for those that are using craft paints. And I'm just going to come in. You can see it's a bit transparent here. And I'm just going to come in and fill in the whole hat. If you cover your little Sharpie lines, that's okay. For those of you using chalk for a transfer, that's fine. Just using it as a guideline. Okay. And you can see that it's a bit streaky. I'm not worried about that because with acrylics, you do layering, lots and lots of layers. So as the layers dry, you'll be painting over them to create dimension. So the mouth and the eyes, I'm going to use a darker brown color. So I'm not going to paint them with this burnt sienna or medium brown right now. Excuse me. We will use a different color for those in a bit. So just make sure you fill in the whole thing. One thing I did forget to put on this drawing that I have on the traceable is little holes. So I thought it would look kind of cool when I was doing the sample to make him look like he's got some holes, because he is quite ancient. So if you want the holes, it's literally just drawing little ovals with your Sharpie or marker or pencil or whatever you're doing. If you're using pencil, you'll just go over the outlines at the end. So my daughters are very into Harry Potter. We read it almost every night now, so I was super duper excited to paint the Sorting Hat, even though he doesn't play too much in the books. It's a fun part that we all enjoyed reading, and then when we watched the movie, seeing seeing him in action. So for the thinner parts, you can switch, whoop, flying brush. You can switch to a thinner brush to try to get those lines in if you have one. If not, it's not the end of the world. If you get a little bit out of the lines, you can always fix it when you do your background. The underside of the hat I'm also going to do with a darker brown, just because it is the underside and it will be shaded a bit. So I mentioned in the supply, the general supplies info, that you'll want to have water and a rag available. So I am rinsing my brush in that water, or paper towel if you don't have rags, that's fine. And get as much of the paint out as you can. Dry it off. It doesn't have to be perfectly dry. And then I'm just going to come in and take some of the burnt umber or dark brown and a little bit of black, Mars black if you're using the professional paints. And now I'm just going to come in to do the eyes, the mouth, and the underside of the hat with this color. Ooh, he's already starting to come to life. This is one of the things I love about paintings. They don't look like much, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, that's it. Again, if you see little holes in your coming through the paint of the white, you know, seeing the white of the canvas or whatever board or paper or whatever you're using, it's okay. We're going to do multiple layers, so don't worry about it. If your drawing is smaller, you can always use a smaller brush. If you are doing this on a very large canvas or large board, feel free to use larger brushes. I'm working on canvas sheets here that I have cut in half, so they are 6 by 9, but you can do whatever you want. I am usually bad about either over mixing colors, meaning mixing too much, or not mixing enough. Usually not mixing enough. So if you run out, don't worry about it. You can always remix. And if the color doesn't match perfectly, that's okay. All right, just checking my camera. Okay, so I've got the basics done. So now we're going to start highlighting and shadowing, probably doing the shadowing first here. Okay, so wherever there's a wrinkle, and you know what? I think I might add an extra wrinkle while I'm doing this, because he doesn't look like he's frowning enough here. So I'm going to come back in like that. All right. Okay, so now wherever there's going to be a shadow, I'll make it darker, but I'm just kind of going back over this to cover any streaks. Now, typically with acrylics, you don't want to work while your paint is still wet, or I shouldn't say wet, when it's tacky. So as I'm filling in and going back over, I'll talk about this. If it's tacky to the touch, then you're just going to pull paint up as you're going. If it is wet though, you can blend colors. Like if you've seen an oil painting, you can then blend the colors, okay? That's kind of what we're going for here, blending those colors together. So this is still wet, the second coat that I just did there. So I'm taking some of that burnt sienna or medium brown, and I'm going to add a little bit of burnt umber to it. So it's not going to be quite as dark as the black and burnt umber that we did before, but it's going to add some sort of depth there. So I'm just coming in on the underside of the hat here, or the point. And then I'm going to come in here I think I need a bit more burnt umber there. And I'm going to come in right here where I'd made that crease. And we will blend this more. I'm just trying to get the outline here. Okay? So wherever you have one of your creases or wrinkles, you'll come in with this darker color. Okay? And then later on, we can throw in some highlights to really make it pop. Every painting has an ugly phase. Every single one. And you're going to look at it and go, oh, I hate this. I hate this. I hate this. Just keep going. I promise. So wherever you have your little wrinkles or towards the end of something, picture it like the light source is up here. We're going to add some of this darker color. Okay. And again, we'll be blending here. So don't worry too much about it. So I'm going to come in there, right along the edge. And let's see, we kind of come back in here. And you can see as I'm working here, the acrylics dry really, really fast. So you don't have to worry too much about the blending. So I'm just coming in just wherever I think there might be a shadow here. So I'm leaving a little bit of room here for a bit of a highlight to show some dimension there. But otherwise, I'm just getting these little wrinkles in a bit more. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit of the darker mixture for here to make it stand out a bit more. Okay. And maybe just along the edge here. Now, I mentioned in one of my posts about glazing liquid. This is called glazing liquid. If you don't have it, that's okay. You can just use water as I'm doing this. So anytime I say dip in the glazing liquid, you would dip in your water a bit to thin it out. So I'm just coming along the edge here. This will eventually look a bit like a shadow. And just coming in along that V and down the sides. Okay. All right. So he's starting to look like something. Actually, I might add a little bit more of the dark in here. Just to add a bit more. And if you mess up like I just did, don't worry about it. We'll go over it. All right. So he's starting to come together. I'm going to kind of fill in again in some of the spots where it's streaky. And then I'll show you some highlights. And if you paint over something you did before, again, don't worry about it. We'll get it all fixed. Even me as a professional painter, I make mistakes. There are no mistakes. What is it? Happy little accidents if you are a Bob Ross fan. And again, if you cover up your Sharpie lines, no big deal. We will go back over. Okay, so he's coming along. All right. So now I'm gonna kind of smooth out some of these streaky bits here that I've got with my, and kind of come back in. This is just straight burnt umber here to try to add some more of that shadow in here. So my paint is still a bit wet there, so you see it's really blending in well. And just adding that little bit of dimension there to it. And you'll just follow along wherever you put your crease marks with the Sharpie. Okay, and when you're done, you can see my paint is just kind of tacky here, so it was pulling up a little bit. So I may have to fix that in a bit. Okay, so I'm just going back over where I had those crease marks. If I need to blend, I can take some of the burnt Sienna medium brown and just go back in and soften it. You don't have to push hard with your brush. We're just making little marks. So see, this is where I was pulling up some of the paint. See, right there? If you can see it. I don't know if you can see it with the lighting, but it's okay. Don't worry about it. All right. Now fill back in. You can just keep layering the paints until you are happy with how it looks, okay? There's no right or wrong. I feel like he is, you know, old and crotchety, so maybe he will be a bit more streaky and wrinkly than another painting, but again, totally up to you how you want to do that. Okay, some more down here. And then I'm just wiping off my brush. I'm not going to clean it in between, just to add. There we go. And just follow your lines with the brush. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. So now we're going to come through and do a little bit of highlighting. So I'm not even bothering to wash my brush right now. I'm just going to take a little bit of white and some of that burnt sienna or medium brown, and wherever you think the light might be hitting it, just gently kind of run your brush along. Okay, so anywhere there might be a wrinkle, I like to put a little highlight at the top of it to kind of show a little bit of dimension. This is kind of cartoony and fun, so I'm not too worried about being exact with it. But you do want to place some highlights. I'm going to use some of that glazing liquid, or you can use water, like I said, and just come in. If you got it a little too intense, like I just did here, you can always go back over with your brush in a minute. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of a highlight here, coming in, and a touch in the triangle, maybe a little bit to the side of the mouth there, maybe coming in here. This is not an exact science. It does not have to be perfect. You really just want to give the illusion of highlights. Just at the top of where your wrinkles would be. Maybe add a bit more. All right, if you're gonna go down where the spaces get a bit smaller, then of course you can switch to a thinner brush like I'm doing here. And come in and just do a little bit of a highlight wherever you feel it might need it. I'm using some of that glazing liquid again, or you can use water. Coming in, let's do a tiny bit of light shining on here. And I'm not fully loading my brush every time, as you can see, because it's starting to dry a little, and that's okay. We just want to get a little bit of color, so I didn't fully load my brush. If I wanted to fully load my brush, we would have a large amount of color coming off on the canvas. All right. So I want this brim to look a bit more 3D-ish. So I'm going to take this, just the small brush again, small round brush again. I'm going to dip right in, oops, too much water on my brush, right in the black, just straight up black. And I'm going to come right along the edge here. And just make sure that that looks like a shadow there. And then I'm also going to take that same thin brush and dip in my highlight color, so that white mixed with burnt sienna or medium brown. And this time I am going to work the paint in. I don't, if you can see on my palette, I'm really pushing it, and I'm making my bristles sort of flattened. And I'm going to come through and just do a tiny line right along the edge. And it's going to come down to where the wiggles start. And then this just makes it look like the edge of the hat. Add some of my brown here to really define the edge here. Okay. Now I want to clean up a little bit of the highlights I did here and shadows. So I'm going to take, whoops, didn't want to do that. I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to make that wrinkle just a bit more defined, maybe add a tiny bit of black just to help bring it out some. And then now the lighter one, kind of smooth it a bit. Now I'll go for my straight sienna medium brown and just kind of blend all of it together there. If you see, you keep going back and forth as the paints are wet, not tacky, wet, and it will blend together. And you can see my highlight dried, so it's not blending anymore. So I'll add a touch more and just go back and forth. So now we have our little highlight there. Okay, I'm going to come back in just wherever I feel it needs a little bit more exaggeration or a highlight, and just add a bit more here. Making sure it's smooth. Wiping that off and coming in with the dark again just to soften the edge of this a bit. You can use some of the glazing liquid or the water. That'll help thin it out. And okay, come in, add some sienna to blend it, or medium brown to blend it. Come in with my highlight, and again, blend. And blend. Alright, so now I'm just gonna fix any, whoops, I got that too dark, any splotchy areas, and I'm gonna go back in where the eyes and the mouth are and fill those in again with that dark brown and black mixture to remove any streakiness that there might be there, or cover up any spots where I may have painted over, like right there. Now, because I want this to be kind of cartoony looking and kind of like a pop, I'm gonna go back over as this dries and redo my Sharpie lines. That is totally up to you if you want to do that. You don't have to. I know I didn't put a Sharpie in the instructions, but if you have any kind of permanent marker. Okay, so I will do that at the end. I'm not real happy how this one section looks, so I'm gonna come back in with the burnt sienna and kind of clean it up a bit, or medium brown. There we go. Kind of blend it a bit here. All right, anywhere you see something you're not super happy with, just feel free to fix as you go. All right, I'm gonna fix my highlight a bit. There we go. There we go. We have ourselves a grumpy little sorting hat. Okay, so to do the background, as I mentioned, there's going to be a white, titanium white or white, blackout white or anything like that, mixed with a little bit of burnt umber. This gives you like a tannish color. And I'm not over mixing. As you can see, the paint is sort of streaky, and I'm just coming in, kind of leaving, not mixing it perfectly is going to give it kind of like a worn feel. If you are not, I'm trying to find it. Oh, if you do not like using the round brush for the background, feel free to switch to a flat brush. Doesn't matter, whatever you want to have. I didn't put it in the supply list because the round will work perfectly well. But if you are working with a large canvas, a flat or wash brush will be better. And then all you have to do is just be really careful as you get around your edges here of your actual image. You don't want to cover your beautiful work. So just kind of be real careful as you're going around each part. Kind of like that. Okay? And I always say the last step to every painting is owning your work. So I want everybody, when it is dry, to sign their work. Now you can do this with your paintbrush. I would use the thinnest one you possibly have. And the best thing to do is to get your paint to the consistency of ink. And you can do that with either water or the glazing liquid if you happen to have that on hand. And see, I just painted over mine. Now I want to show you how to fix that. Okay? Because acrylics are water-based, if you catch it before it fully dries, you can get some clean water on a clean brush, okay? And you can come right over where you just painted and just be very careful and just pick that paint right up. You just gotta keep wiping it. I'm just using my fingers to wipe it off because I'm messy that way. But you can wipe it on a rag or whatever you feel like using. So the key to this is the paint underneath has to be completely dry. And then the paint on top, oops, got my hand in it, has to be wet. And you can use your finger to clean up as needed. There we go. All done. So, as you can see, acrylic is really easy to work with. Alright, come around. Now, if you're not working with canvas that is taped down, You can actually move the canvas around as you're doing this to make the outlining of it easier, but mine is taped down and not on an easel, so I'm just going as carefully as I can here. Round brushes are very versatile. You will, you'll see me using them a lot. They are one of my favorite brushes. They can make very interesting designs. In fact, I almost always use them in every single painting. So if you don't want to sign your name with the paintbrush, you can always let it dry and then paint, use a marker or crayon or pen or pencil or whatever. But be proud of what you've made and sign your name, even if it's on the back. It's you know, this is not, you're taking a big step here, learning how to paint these things, and they're really fun, and I want you to be proud of them. Okay. All right, so my background is done. I really like the streaky effect. It makes it seem worn out, but if you don't like the streaky effect, you can definitely go back over it. You don't have to. So since the inside of my painting is dry, I'm coming in with the Sharpie to just go back over. Alternatively, you can use a very thin brush and do it with black paint. But since I showed you how to do this with the Sharpie, I'm just coming in here with the Sharpie. All right, and then come down here. One thing to note, if you are using Sharpie on top of paint, eventually the Sharpie will end up wearing out. It just doesn't handle the having the acrylic on it very well. So just keep that in mind. If you are absolutely in love with your Sharpie, then don't use it for this. Get another one. Again, you don't have to go back and outline the whole thing. I'm just doing it because I like that pop / cartoony look to it. And voila! Now I'm going to sign my name. To show you what I use to sign my name, I use a liner brush. You don't have to do that. You can definitely do it with a very thin round brush if you need to. I use the glazing liquid, not necessary. You can do it with water. And you want the paint really to be thin so that it is like ink. And there you have your sorting hat from Harry Potter. I'm going to do the big reveal here since it is taped. Get my tape from underneath. Ta-da! Voila. Sorting hat. All right, guys, enjoy.